How did I get started in real estate? I think to understand who I am today and why I talk so passionately about real estate, you have to know where I began. I didn't certainly start where I'm at now, but as the old saying goes, you don't have to be good to get started, but you got to get started to get good. So stay tuned. I'm going to share my story of how I got started in real estate investing. My name is Jay Lehman. I am a realtor here in Central Illinois with eXp Realty. I help homeowners and investors alike find properties that they can either live in or build cash flow with. I'm also an investor myself, and this video is going to be about my story and how I got involved in real estate investing. I've always wanted to, since I was about in my mid-20s, I said, man, I really want to get into real estate. But the question was, how? Where do I get started? I started reading books. Probably the first book I read that really was into real estate investing was a book by Robert Kiyosaki called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I then went on from there to a Rich Dad Advisor book named by Ken McElroy, which was the ABCs of real estate investing. And I started on those two books, and I read those books in 2014, but it would be 3 or 4 years later that I actually got my first property. And I was so scared to start in real estate investing because I was scared about what I didn't know, and I always thought I needed to learn more and get more educated before I actually took a leap. Now, education's not bad, getting knowledge is not bad, but we learn the best when we actually take action and do. And it took me a while to take that first step. I was living in the Chicago area, and real estate was pretty expensive for what my budget was. I was in my late 20s, early 30s, and I knew I wanted to get in real estate other than the home I owned, but I just couldn't figure out a way to get started. Well, I looked back to where my hometown was in Champaign, Illinois, and I saw that real estate prices were not a lot lower, but substantially lower than they were in the Chicago area, even around campus of the University of Illinois. I also looked to a town about 40 minutes east of Champaign in Danville, Illinois, and those were really low. I mean, like the lowest prices I had ever seen. So I reached out to a realtor in Champaign, Illinois, and I reached out to a realtor in Danville, Illinois. And on one day I drove down to Champaign, and in the morning I saw properties in Champaign, and in the afternoon I saw properties in Danville. They were all similar, probably the cheapest properties that I could find in the towns. And the reason I looked at the cheapest ones, because my idea was, okay, if I buy the cheapest ones, if the market tanks or goes down, or if some 2008 crash, then I probably won't lose that much money. In fact, I'll probably, only be out $5,000-$10,000. If I'm buying a $50,000 house and it goes down 10%, well, that's only $5,000. So I was always about hedging my risk on what's the worst that could happen. Well, I went to Champaign, I looked at some properties, and as I walked through the properties, the very first time you've been through any rentals of low-income housing, it can be a little bit different than maybe houses that you may be accustomed to walking through. Because these are renters, these are people that are working full-time jobs, they don't have much space to store stuff, and so sometimes it's crowded, sometimes there's pets, and whether the pets are in cages or not, you never know. And it was a little bit startling. I was like, okay, this is interesting. This is what a rental property in this price point would look like. I ended up going to Danville in that afternoon, and I looked at probably 6-7 properties, and I had no intention of buying. But as I walked through these Danville properties, I saw these are $20,000-$30,000 properties at that time. This was 2018, and I was like, I could buy 2, 3, 4 of these with my budget, using a loan at 20% down, and I had no lender, I had no insurance person, I had never bought any kind of rental real estate in my life, but I said, I could kind of visualize myself doing it. But what really turned the corner is the realtor asked me after we walked all these properties, are you ready to make an offer? And I really wasn't, but I didn't think the properties would last longer than a couple days on the market. Maybe I was wrong, maybe I had FOMO, but I decided to take the leap and do that. And so my first property was a property that was for $20,000. It was a 3-bed, 1-bath, and was rented for $575 a month. I thought, with that rent to price ratio and how low it is, how bad could it be? And that's how I got started in real estate investing, with that property. Now from there, I've been able to, from that one property and subsequent properties after that, I bought and sold over 100 properties myself in Danville. And I've used that money to 1031 exchange, which is a way that we defer our capital gains by putting them into apartment buildings in Champaign, Illinois, and also into Iowa City, Iowa. And today, we have close to 200 units that we own, and also we've raised money for other real estate related properties. It's a 150 unit property in Champaign that we've done a syndication on. There's a 180 unit property in Iowa. We've done a syndication. We gathered groups of investors to pile in money, and we go in together and buy a big complex that we may not be able to afford. And so altogether, I have ownership in 400 to 500 units of rental property. And I just started in 2018, but it all started with that one house. And so my lesson for you is that don't, wait to get good to get started. You got to get started to get good. And so you may be reading, you may be on the fence. I have found that for real estate investors, the hardest property is the first one. And once you get to 3 to 5 properties, you start to get a hang of it. And once you get to 3 to 5, you go from 5 to 50 properties or 50 units really, really quick. So if you're looking to make that shift, I want you to comment down below. I want you to tell me where you're at. How many properties do you have? And what is the number one thing holding you back? If you can think of that number one thing, post it down below. And would you subscribe to this channel? Helps me tell more people about my real estate story and help them invest in Central Illinois. Let's go.